A few years back, my girlfriend and I, having hiked several other parts of the Appalachian Trail, decided we wanted to give the southern portion of Virginia's trail a shot. It is about 166 miles long and runs through George Washington and Jefferson National Forests from Roanoke County to Pearisburg in Giles County. This is definitely one of the more remote and less traveled parts of the trail, which is exactly what we were looking for. We gathered our gear and made our way to the start of the Virginia Creeper Trail to begin our journey. We had planned our journey to end at Damascus and figured by the time we got there we would be more than ready to get home to our own beds. It was early October, and the changing of the leaves and colors were amazing. The air was crisp and cool, perfect hiking weather with beautiful scenery. The majority of the trip was pretty uneventful, just your typical hike, but our last couple of nights is where things got weird. On this portion of the trail, you are supposed to camp on the trail or a designated shelter. We didn't really want to run into other people and didn't want anyone coming up on us in the middle of the night. We decided to ignore those suggestions and find our own little spot off the trail. A little searching around and we found a spot a little ways off the trail in the middle of a small clearing. It was perfect. We set up camp, cooked some food, talked for a while, and then snuggled up and went to sleep for the night. Somewhere around 2 a.m., I was awoke by my girlfriend shaking me awake, telling me, "Get your gun, someone is outside walking around our tent." She informed me that she woke up to what sounded like someone right outside the tent running a knife or something along the side while circling us. When hiking, I carry a 911 and a judge with me. You never know exactly who or what you might run into when on such a long hike in a remote location. I got the judge out of my pack, and then we sat silently listening for any sounds. A few minutes of nothing but the breeze blowing through the trees, and then I heard it. Snap, crunch, snap. Someone, or something, walking in the woods behind our tent. I got the flashlight and silently made my way out of the tent. Our fire had went out, so it was nearly pitch black, illuminated by only the dim glow of the October moon. I told my girlfriend to stay put while I checked it out. I didn't flick the flashlight on right away so as to not give away that I was out of the tent and have it become a shining beacon of my location. Instead, I waited to hear more noises. After a few minutes, snap, crunch, crack. It sounded like it was bipedal based on the way the steps were paced. I turned on the flashlight and flooded the area with light. I thought I saw someone move behind a tree. I yelled out and told them to go away and that I was armed. I kept the light on the area with my gun drawn and slowly approached towards the area where I thought I saw the figure. Then, from my right, I hear what sounds like someone running away through the woods. I spin and face my light that way, and then from the original spot hear who or whatever was there take off into the woods. There's no way I'm giving chase, so I return to the campsite. I tell my girlfriend about what happened, and I end up sitting guard outside the tent, in the darkness until daybreak. In the morning, I looked around for a bit of signs of who or whatever it was, and I discovered a boot print in some soft, moist dirt not far from our tent. It wasn't mine, and it wasn't my girl's. This freaked me out as it confirmed that someone, perhaps more than one, was skulking around our tent in the dark. I kept it to myself because I didn't want to freak my girl out any more than she already was. And at this point, we were pretty deep in and still had 2 days left. That day we walked a little faster than normal and covered as much ground as possible. When it came time to set up camp, I found a spot near a cliff where we could place the tent in a small overhang and prevent anyone from coming up behind us. The whole day up to this point, I had a feeling we were being followed. I had no confirmation of this, as I hadn't seen or heard anyone else, but it was just a gut feeling. We set up camp and made some food, then retreated to the tent. I gave my girl the 911, and I kept the judge right next to me, and I assured her that if I slept at all, it would be with one eye open. After a while, she drifted off to sleep, and I stayed awake listening to the sounds of the woods at night. I was awake for a few hours, just waiting to see if anything was going to happen. And at some point, I guess my exhaustion caught up with me and I drifted off. I awoke sometime later to what sounded like someone going through our stuff outside the tent. I grabbed my gun and woke my girlfriend, shushing her to be quiet. From the faint glow of the fire, I could see someone's silhouette against the tent. There was really someone out there. I yelled out to them something along the lines of, "We're armed, get the fuck out of here." They dropped what they were doing and bolted. I came out of the tent, gun drawn, ready to shoot someone. Our stuff was strewn all about. They had rummaged through quite a bit of our stuff. I walked to the edge of the woods in the direction of whoever was out there, but they had fled. There was a creek nearby, and I walked to the edge, where there was a small trail running alongside it. Down the creek, I could see a light. It looked like a lantern the way it flickered. Then I saw 3 more emerge from the other side of the woods. I told my girlfriend to start packing up whatever she could, and that we were leaving, now. We packed up everything we could of value, left the tent and a few other items, and headed back onto the trail in the middle of the night. I kept hearing people talking off in the woods and hearing branches snap for quite some ways. I kept looking behind us every few seconds to make sure nobody was coming up on us. It was completely nerve-wracking. If something happened, we were still a long ways from anywhere and quite literally on our own. Since we hadn't seen another hiker this entire time we had been out there, I really felt we were in serious danger. We had been walking for quite some time when I heard something in the woods behind us. As we rounded a corner, I turned around and saw someone step out onto the trail and just stand there watching us. It was just as the sun was coming up and barely any light. I couldn't make out any features, just the silhouette. I stopped and looked at them for a second and asked them who they were and what they wanted. They just stood there silently, watching us, and then turned and walked back into the woods. We picked up the pace and kept going, looking back every so often. We did not see them again, but my gut told me they were still there for quite a ways. We eventually reached the end of the trail and got to where we had parked my girlfriend's car, extremely exhausted. We had made it out of the Virginia woods without becoming a meal for a clan of cannibalistic inbred hillbillies, which is what I pictured happening in my head the whole time. I have no idea who they were or what they wanted. Maybe it was someone just messing with us? Maybe it really was a clan of deformed hillbillies who were hunting us. I will never know, because I will not be returning to find out. A few years ago, during what was probably the darkest period in my life, I worked overnights at a local Walmart. 6 days a week, I would spend 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. stocking anything from fishing lures to makeup. I've never been in a more depressing environment. Everyone was really apathetic and too caught up in their own depressing lives to care about anything or anyone else. This included the managers. Walmarts have a generally weird vibe to them anyway. This was a 24-hour supercenter in rural West Virginia, so you can imagine the characters, meth and opioid addicts mostly, that would show up throughout the night. We had no security guards, and from what I have come to understand, a lot of the cameras, and especially in the parking lot, haven't worked properly in a while. Being one of the few young female overnight stalkers, I encountered my fair share of unwanted advances, but the one who took the cake was the guy who would show up every time I went outside for a smoke break, regardless of the time. 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 6 a.m., it didn't matter. Dude would appear around the corner and try to strike up a conversation within seconds of me stepping outside. It didn't matter what entrance I used, and there were 3. At first, I assumed he worked there. Why else would anyone voluntarily lurk around a shitty Walmart all hours of the night? Pretty much everyone on that shift smoked during their 2 nightly 15-minute breaks, so it was not out of the question to think he was doing the same. Maybe the timing was just a coincidence. But no, I came to find out he didn't work there, even though he often wore a dark blue t-shirt just like an overnight employee. I stopped going outside alone, and would only venture outside with one of my guy friends, particularly one I've been friends with since middle school. Even their presence didn't deter him, and it kind of became a store-wide joke. I was weirded out but not alarmed until he started getting a little more aggressive. He'd ask me if I was seeing anyone and would ask me out. Pretty much every chance he got. I was playing GTA 5 at the time, so I came up with a story about my scary long-distance boyfriend, Trevor, from Northern California. Even then, he wasn't fazed, and I was done feigning politeness and began ignoring him. One night, when my main guy friend had called in sick, and the others were working on something on the opposite side of the store, I went outside with 2 older women in my area. And after a few minutes they went inside, and just as I was about to follow them, Walmart Creeper suddenly appeared. Pretty sure he'd been waiting around the corner, and insisted on me going to his car with him to see something, taking my hand in his. Not hard, but I was still pissed he touched me. I'm a generally angry person anyway, so I lost my fucking shit, ripped my hand away, and sprinted inside. I reported him to the head manager that night and found out he had a cousin who worked in the back unloading trucks, and apparently he liked to hang out with his cousin at work. The cousin apologized profusely and said he'd talk to him, but the management was a whole other level of shitty and didn't even say anything to the creeper, let alone ban him from the premises. I ended up quitting specifically because of the horrible management, although it was over an entirely different situation. Found out through a friend that the guy who was still hanging out at the store every night and was still doing his creepy thing with other women tried like hell to learn my name and where I lived. He was apparently asking around about me for weeks after I left, before disappearing himself. I can't help but keep thinking about how those parking lot cameras haven't worked in such a long time, and if anyone would have cared enough to notice if I just disappeared on one of those long, tiring work nights. I am a 33-year-old white female from Los Angeles. 3 years ago, my boyfriend and I, as planned for 5 years, turned 30, sold everything we owned, including my car, took his Trailblazer, and decided to just travel around the States and Canada. I guess you could call us backpackers, as we tend to chase good weather, find a state park and backcountry hike into the wilderness for days at a time. My brother likes to joke that we are anti-establishment hippies. We don't necessarily live off the grid, but between the two of us, we have one prepaid phone we use for emergencies or checking in with family and friends, and one MacBook which I use for work. I'm a freelance writer/content creator, and I am on retainer with my robotics company. I mostly write boring white papers or web content. The whole point of our living situation is to live debt-free and have as few bills as possible. I only use free Wi-Fi, so 1 to 2 times a week we have to go to a city with a Starbucks. This background info is only important so you know more about who we are and how simply we live. Neither of us is involved in social media and know very little of Reddit or Instagram or use any apps because our phone isn't a smartphone. We don't even text. Last summer, we decided to do some backcountry hiking in Arkansas. It's one of those states you don't ever really hear about other hikers visiting, but we read that it had some beautiful natural landscape, and it really does. The rules at this particular park were pretty lax. We didn't need a permit. There were a few basic laws/guidelines, but there was no check-in needed. We had all the basics and had planned to do a 6-day hike, 3 in and 3 out. The whole time we were out there, we didn't see or hear another soul, but on day 1, we were prepping to move off trail and find a camping spot as it was getting near dusk. Half of a mile off trail is usually the standard for us. We took what looked like kind of an animal trail, and about half a mile out we saw a green 2-person tent. It was almost camouflaged in the foliage, so we came on it almost by accident. Some backpackers prefer privacy, and others are more social. We're the more social type. We've had some great experiences camping near other backpackers, sharing stories, food, and a joint or two. We were around 30 yards away from the tent, and it was zip closed, so my boyfriend shouted a greeting to make our presence known. No movement and no sound. We assumed a green tent guy either wasn't around or didn't want to be bothered, so we started off in a new direction to get some distance between us. We camped, never heard a peep, and we moved along the next morning, completely forgetting about green tent guy until nearing the end of day 5 on our trek back. We were again looking for a spot to camp off the trail when we came up on the green tent again. This isn't that unusual, but normally backcountry hikers keep moving, so we weren't really expecting that. The tent flap was open, so my boyfriend yells his greeting again, and nothing. My boyfriend wants to go check it out, saying, "It's weird, and maybe somebody is hurt." I didn't like the idea from the get-go because even though we hadn't had any bad experiences personally, we'd heard enough stories from other backpackers about hermits and mountain men that want privacy, carry guns, etc. But my boyfriend assured me that we'd be fine, and if all else fails, offer him some weed to keep the peace, and we'd go on our way. As soon as we get within 20 yards of the place, the smell of decomposition is intense. My boyfriend has been hailing his greeting over the last 20 yards, and once the smell hits him, he stops and turns to me and says, "What if we find a dead body?" My skin crawled. I was immediately afraid. I've never seen a dead body before and don't want to. The closer we got to the tent, the worse the smell got. I knew for sure we were going to walk in and see some old camper's rotting corpse. But what we found was worse than that. Outside the tent was a dead deer's legs, all 4 of them covered in flies. It looked like the legs had been cut most of the way and then ripped off the rest of the way. It was an absolute mess. Inside was the body and the head of the deer, but the middle portion was swaddled in a blue fleece blanket that was blood-soaked at the bottom where the legs used to be. It was laying on its side, bottom facing the tent entry. The tail had been cut off, and the private region was covered in dried blood and a gape, like something had been penetrating it. The same with its mouth. The bottom portion was bent down at a scary, broken-looking angle. The tent was open, so we could see everything without having to go inside. Not that we would have anyway, because at this point the smell was almost debilitating. There was a dirty, almost empty clear bottle of Jergens baby oil and a stained green and white fringe kitchen towel. That was it. I immediately started crying and begged him to go. All he could muster was, what the fuck? And we turned and ran. We ran to the trail and jogged down it for as far as we could go until dusk was fully on us, and we had to set up camp. We didn't go very far off the trail and neither of us slept. We didn't start a fire or use headlamps after full dark. We just sat up whispering to each other, going over and over what we had just seen. Every little noise startled us. It was like our brains were on red alert. I kept thinking any moment a dead deer rapist would come back to his tent, see our footprints or something, know we were there, and track us back to our tent. I've never been so scared in my entire life. Just before dawn, we tore down and started out. My boyfriend stopped at the ranger station on our way out of the park to report what we had seen. The ranger was a young guy around our age, and he looked as freaked out by our story as we were telling it. He wrote most of it down, and my boyfriend showed him on a map approximately where it had been. And he asked if we knew how the deer was killed, and at that point we hadn't even thought about it. We just assumed it had been shot, but because of the blanket we didn't see a wound, but we weren't exactly giving it an autopsy either. We have since shortened our backcountry hikes to a maximum of 4 days. We've also been a lot less eager to call out to other campsites, and have never approached another unmanned tent again.